All right, Jennifer, are we good to get started? Yeah.
Great, thank you.
All right, it looks like we've got some people joining the webinar now. We'll give it about a minute or so while people are joining and we'll get started. Thank you everyone for joining. We're gonna just give it about 1 minute here while we get some stragglers coming into the meeting room. Welcome everybody. So I got a few joining here, so get started in about 15 seconds. All right, everyone, we'll get kicked off here. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining this first in a series of webinars brought to you by Web Connect Plus. So first, a little bit about Web Connect Plus. Web Connect Plus is a global online community founded by a few leading industry-leading companies in our industry. The purpose behind Web Connect Plus is really like we understand that printers, they need to reduce their costs, streamline processes, and just kind of increase the user experience that the printer converter is bringing to their customer. Their customer is used to this Amazon one-click order type of a world that we live in now. And we know that this transformation to more automation, to better user experience, can be a challenging one. A lot of times we don't even know where to start. The printer converter doesn't even know where to begin to start to ask questions. So we see this all over the place. We see a lot of the same questions coming up at all of our different customers. So our companies, Infigo, Significans, and Tilia Labs, we've come together to form this global community where we can be a resource for you to ask questions and just to kind of meet regularly to just help to answer your questions around this whole transformation of automation and of web to print. So the three founding members, we have Infigo, world-class web to print solution provider. We have Significans Automation, next generation software integrator, focused on custom workflow development, color management, and really end-to-end business integration. And then finally, we have Tilia Labs. Tilia Labs is API-driven planning and imposition. So in this first webinar that we're going to bring to you today, we're going to talk about how these three companies and our solutions are open platforms. They are completely integratable, bringing the printer, the print service provider, the most flexibility when it comes to delivering a streamlined end-to-end solution for your customer. So today we're going to talk about how Infigo, we're going to start with in Infigo, in the web to print platform. Your customer is going to initiate an order, design their product, and pass that seamlessly from the web to print platform down into InFocus Switch, which is going to manage the PDF workflow, and then finally end up in Tilia Phoenix for imposition. So we'll see a true web all the way out to production workflow today, brought to you by our three partners. A little bit about myself. My name is George Follickman. I'm the sales director here at Tilia Labs. I'll be moderating today's event. I'll be asking the Q&A session at the end. Before we get started, I would like to do a little bit of housekeeping. So I know all of you are probably sick of Zoom at this point. Maybe you already know everything there is to know about Zoom, but just for a refresher for those who don't, you are going to have the ability to ask questions to us and to the panel throughout this presentation. We'll save all those questions to the end during our Q&A session. But if you'd like to ask a question during this presentation, go ahead and use the chat function. Direct your questions to me. Yeah, we've turned off some of the chat functions in Zoom, so this is going to be the best way for you to ask those questions, especially as they pop up during the presentation. Okay, I would like to introduce you to your customer. Meet Amy. Amy is the creative director of Automate Brewery. Automate Brewery is that microbrewery down the street. And Amy is the creative director of this brewery. She is a young millennial. She is a print novice. She knows very, very little about print production. And quite frankly, she doesn't want to know anything about it. What Amy is looking for, she definitely does not want to interact with your salespeople. She wants a streamlined, like just well-tailored experience where she can go online, order one of her SKUs. Her company, Automate Brewery, they have tons of SKUs. Every few weeks, they're coming out with a new beer flavor, a new beer style, and she needs to be able to order labels for those beers. But she also needs to just manage the professional branding of Automate Brewery. She wants to appear bigger than she actually is. So she needs a way that she can just go online, click to order, click to reorder. And do all of this without any kind of friction or anything that's going to bring her down. So Amy's journey is actually going to start on a web to print platform. So this is where our partner Infigo comes in, and specifically Antonia is going to walk us through the first phase of Amy's journey. Antonia, it's over to you.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Just covering all bases here. I'm so super happy to be a part of this inaugural webinar. Automation really is key to all of our customer success, and that's why we can't wait to bring you this series. For those who don't know me, I'm Antonia. I'm the Partnership Growth Manager at Infigo, and I'm going to be taking you through the first part of the demonstration. I've also lucky enough to have Douglas on the call as well. Douglas is the founder and CEO of Infigo, and he's going to be joining us for the Q&A session at the end. Douglas has a vast experience within the industry, and anything UX, e-commerce, automation, he's your man. So get thinking of your question. So I briefly thought about how I could skirt around the topic, but unfortunately I have had to bring in the C word. So COVID has really accelerated the customer buying experience, and so it's a more e-commerce based experience and is effectively essential. So and the need for automation is then absolutely essential. So the way that buyer behavior was slowly changing pre-pandemic, but what we found is this is massively accelerated over the last 2 years. So people are, buying, in disparate locations. They're much more isolated. They need to have, buy things online. They need to buy things on their phone. There's just so many more opportunities to use an e-commerce platform than what there was maybe even, 5 or 2 years ago. So I wanted to just quickly mention about what we have actually seen within the last 2 years. So I sat down with our customer success team and just asked them a couple of questions really about, what our customers have been, what they have done within the last 2 years and how they have made this a success. So the first thing that came was that 24/7, 365 ordering is effectively essential. And that's what an e-commerce web to print software enables effectively. But what we have seen is that we've seen our clients pushing the software out of the norm. So by pushing them, the traditional, going online, ordering a product, checking out, they've been pushing their customers, they've been going to the brands and they've said, we've got this amazing tool that allows us to create this personalization experience, and we think this is going to give you XYZ value. So as an example, a brand wanted to give their their employees a personalization experience to, to show they're being thought of, etc., etc. So they sent them a link. They could go on personalize an item, they could see it, and then it was delivered to their door. They put in their address and it was delivered to the door, a couple of days later. So this is the power of the software, is that they were really able to create really exciting personalization opportunities. And this, my point 3 and 4 is really where the creativity and innovation. We are so fortunate to be in such an extraordinary creative and innovative market. And this is what we've seen with our product, we can create and we can innovate, and we can also take it to the market in a timely fashion too. So what I'm going to demonstrate you to in a moment is our software, but there's to summarize it in a nutshell, there's 3 key areas. So the first area is the e-commerce area. So we have, within the software, you can order items, you can check out, you can add to basket, you can pay, you can have delivery methods, all that kind of stuff. So the standard e-commerce opportunities. We then have Mega Edit. Mega Edit is our very powerful online dynamic designer. This is an editor that can have a plethora of opportunities. With Mega Edit, you can edit something completely from scratch. So you could have a beer label design where users can go in and add in their logo, add in their imagery. They can completely create from scratch. It can be templated, or they could be an upload product. So if someone already has their artwork, they can upload that artwork. Mega Edit is a webinar in itself, so I'm not going to push it too much further. And the third part is automation. So as part of our software, we have a very dynamic application called Connect Flow, which allows us to collate all this order information and send it into third-party systems. So in this case, we're going to send it into Switch, and Andrew and Sean and Significance in a moment will show you that integration. I'm just going to turn my screen to the demonstration website that we've set up. And this website is really for Amy. So we've set this website up for Amy so that she can go in, design her beer label, or upload her artwork. So we've created 2 use case scenarios here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to design a beer label first of all. And with this example, I'm going to initially make some selections, preview a live price, put in how many I need of those, and then I'm going to launch the editor. So this is launching Mega Edit. And this is a templated product where Amy can go in and make some small changes to her artwork that she needs, and then have that sent straight to press to be produced. So on the right hand side here, I've got the option to change the background. Fabulous. I'm going to change it to a blue background. I've got the option to select a logo. Right, today I'm going to use my Infigo logo, and I'm going to call this my beer. So most of the time, I think beer is fairly delicious, so we'll call it a delicious beer. And I can see that as a preview. Now, the extension of this, and what really excites our customers and our customers' customers, is that you can see this in 3D. So not only are you having the opportunity to see it as a flat layout, you're also seeing it in 3D. So actually, this gives me a lot of opportunity to make small minor changes. Actually, my logo, I'd like to change the logo, or I'd like to make some movements. But they can move it around, play around with it, zoom in, zoom out. That has such massive value to the customer. And it also means that there's not going to be back and forth approval emails, which I'm sure you're all accustomed to. And at this point, yeah, I'm really happy with my design. I'm going to add it to my cart. I'm going to check out, and then I'm done. I've ordered my products, so I don't have to think about it for the rest of the day. So that's one example of a product. The other example that I'm going to show is an upload product. So effectively, all an upload product is if someone already has their artwork, they know what they're doing, they don't want to muck about, they just want to see a price, they want to make some small selections, they want to put in the quantity that they need, they want to press start, and they want to upload their artwork. So it's a simple, easy user experience to upload your artwork. So I've uploaded my artwork, I've previewed it, I'm happy with it, and I add it to my cart. At this point, we could also potentially pre-flight the artwork if it was necessary. So yeah, I've got my basket, a standard checkout process. I'm going to press checkout. I'm already a customer, so I'm going to log in, or I could re-register if I wanted to too. So at this point, I'm going to log in, and then I'm going to take myself through the checkout process. Now, the flexibility within the software means that you can integrate with things like different delivery carriers. That you could have rush on there. You could have, a cost associated to that. We could potentially even integrate into a payment provider so that you could pay by credit card, etc., etc. I get a confirmation of my order. I place the order, and then at this point, me as the customer, I get an email saying, "Fabulous, Antonio, you've created your product. You've got an order. We are going to be processing this now." What the software then does is creates this order, creates all the information, and it collates it and sends it into a third-party system, which in this case will be Switch, for production purposes. So it's a full end-to-end automated solution. I hope that was it was a very quick demonstration. I know we're limited on time here because questions are important, but at this point I'm going to hand over now to Sean and Andrew.
Thank you, Antonia. I will just wait briefly for Andrew to share his screen on his side. While he's doing that, though, I'd like to welcome everybody. My name is Sean Davis, Director of Technology at Significans Automation. I also have with me here Andrew Oswood, who's a specialist in the Infocus suite of software, who is clearly sharing the screen, and he'll be demonstrating some of what Switch and the suite of software has to offer. So as an industry integrator and an added value reseller of best-in-class software, we have seen a huge demand for automation to facilitate e-commerce, smart gaming, and imposition all across the sectors. We have grown with our customers who need touchless environments and who are centered around web to print. We're going to be focusing on, the integration between Infigo and Tilia's suite of software and how a true end-to-end lights out automation process will actually work within an environment like this. So to start off here, for those of you who may have never seen Infocus before or Switch, it's largely a middleware product. It's a hub and spoke or a glue that binds all of your isolated processes in one. It's the workhorse behind the scenes that does all the heavy lifting before pushing it to its next destination. Very simply, it takes an input, it does something, and then it outputs something in return. Following where Antonia left off, we're demonstrating a complete hands-off approach, like I said. Switch is actually going to retrieve the order data from Infigo, and that's going to include the art as well as anything to do with the order itself. So the order quantities, potentially if you expand it out, what type of stock you want to print that on. It really sky's the limit. So whatever data that is coming from Infigo, we can utilize that as we're going through the process. So Switch in this case is utilized to collect and store the files for production in a production server environment. So what Andrew's bringing up here, as we collect the data, as Infigo is passing us the information, we're actually creating a job folder or a order folder with all the relevant information that's been passed. So we've set up some existing folders and we are storing some of the files that are being passed down, in this case, in an originals folder, or depending on how you have it set up in your environment, it could be like a customer supplied folder where we drop the original files. After this is established and we create this folder structure, Switch is going to pass the files to Pitstop, which is another one of the Infocus suite of software. And that's actually going to pre-flight, analyze the file, and fix anything that needs to be addressed before the file can move on. So in a complete lights out automated process, Pitstop can analyze, it can report and route jobs on whether or not it's valid or invalid. The report itself that comes out of this product can be tailored and customized to fit the needs of the individual product. If you wanted to do a different report based off the print method, or you wanted to do your own sort of customized profiling. So for example, if you work with door hangers and you wanted to pre-flight in a very specific manner for door hangers, you could certainly do that. And then have a separate one for business cards and so on and so forth. In this example, what Andrew's brought up here, we've actually branded the report with the Web Connect logo. And in this report itself, we can customize what can be seen versus taken off if it doesn't need to be seen by an end user or by somebody within production as a whole. So with the bookmarks on the left-hand side, we can exclude, for example, page boxes. If page boxes doesn't need to be shown, or again, depending on what you're working with, it's not really necessary, or the client doesn't care about the inner workings of some of that data. They just want a very high level, like this summary page, to be able to see what's been modified, any warnings that are maybe okay to move forward, but we still want to alert somebody, and then an error specifically of what's critical, what can't move forward. In this particular case, there is image that is below the resolution that we specified, which it's going to error out that file. And depending on what we do within a process, we could route back to Infigo and say, please upload a new file. This file is not valid. As Antonia said, you could, of course, hook up, pit stop / pre-flighting within Infigo and have the files pre-flighted on that side too. Now, this isn't the only type of report that we can do with pit stop. There is also an annotated report that we can utilize. And what Andrew's brought up here, this is a little more hands-on, and depending on your client or depending on the team that's actually going to be utilizing these files, you can build this in a way so they can actually click on the individual report item or bullet point here, and it'll highlight the specific area of what's actually wrong with this file. So again, very much the same file as what was demonstrated in the previous report. The image resolution is too low. And when he clicked on it, you can see that sort of grayed out the background that highlighted that specific piece. That's because this whole component is actually classified as an image, and that's why it's highlighting everything. But it's very much the same with warnings as well. Anything you see within this bookmark section, you can click on. It will highlight the respective object or component on the page. And it gives, in my opinion, the more advanced users the capability to click through and look at some of this information. The full report is great. Again, from a branding perspective, you can customize and tailor it. But if you have advanced users, this tends to be the go-to from my experience personally. This isn't the only thing we can do with reporting though. Utilizing Switch, we can actually generate an HTML branded email. And that email itself, again, can include any of the information that we have from this report. And again, in the example here, we've actually tailored it and branded it with the Web Connect information. And we've actually attached the report to the email. So again, that can be viewed. So if in this particular example, if the pre-flight fails, we're automatically sending an email that can be to the client, somebody internally, a distribution email to a group. Really sky's the limit, and it really depends on your environment and how engaged you would like that client to be. To add to that as well, if, as I mentioned, doing a call back to Infigo, if there is an issue with the file, we could potentially alert back to Infigo and say, hey, please upload a new product or a new PDF document so we can pre-flight it and then push that forward. So just to summarize on the pre-flighting component there, once you've pre-flighted a document through PitStop, that document will essentially be sent back to Switch, which is what we're looking at right now, and it'll go down one of several paths. So in this case, we have an art folder, we have a report folder, and we have a failed folder. In our example, when we're failing, we're emailing it out to somebody, but we can certainly store that back into the production server if we needed to. But the ones we're more concerned about, or the ones that we need to actually push forward to Tilia, would be our art, which Andrew has highlighted there, coming out of the pre-flight PDF component. And we also have the report being pumped out on the folder just below that, and that's going to be stored, again, within the order folder, the folder that we created in the production server. So anybody internally can look at that report if need be. So once we pre-flighted a file, now we need to prep the file for it to actually be ready to be pushed over to Tilia and to be imposed. One of the unique aspects of Switch is the utilization of an app store. So similar to Google Play or Apple's App Store, if there's a function that's missing in Switch that you don't currently see, or you really have a very specific need, you can search in the App Store to see if a third-party developer has created an app to fit your need. What Andrew's brought up here is actually the App Store, and we filtered on, in this case, some of Tilia's apps that they have available within the store. There are components that are free, and then there are also components like any app store that you can certainly purchase for, which is either a one-time or a yearly fee if need be. Going back to Switch, as you can see, we are actually utilizing a bunch of these apps in a couple different locations. So the ones that Andrew are highlighting, we have scan hierarchy, create job folder. Those ones at the top are existing products or apps that exist on the App Store that are free today for anyone to utilize if need be. And looking at the list of participants, there's a couple of you that I've worked with and Andrew has worked with as well that has actually used some of these apps in existing workflows. The bottom component, you can also incorporate custom scripts using a scripting module. And in this case, Significans has developed a couple of apps that helps manipulate the data coming from Infigo, and then we can modify that data so we can pass it to Phoenix correctly. And I don't know, Andrew, if you wanted to briefly show one of those CSVs that we have there. So in this particular example, we are using a custom app that's taking some of the data that was passed, and we are generating a CSV file that is going to be fed into Phoenix, passing the order quantity, what stock we're using specifically, whether we're allowed to rotate it or not, if there's bleed information, spacing, etc. This can be expanded upon, and this is, of course, not unique to Switch. This is all components that are also available in Phoenix, which I'm sure Tyler will touch on shortly. So once we create that CSV file and we pass it into Phoenix, obviously we're imposing the file. And again, throughout this whole process from start to finish, when Antonia placed the order to now, everything's been hands off. Andrew has been doing nothing behind the scenes to fake this, so to speak. So everything's ran through from start to finish, and this is the imposed file from some of the items that have been placed. And again, once you impose something, we can certainly send it straight to the RIP. If we wanted to do some color correcting using either built-in components in Switch or other third-party apps that exist, we can do that before we impose or after we impose, really depending on the need. As I mentioned, it's a middleware, but it's also a sandbox. So really, whatever you can dream up, we can certainly do within Switch. We just sort of map that out and then build it in there. And then, as I said, it's a hub and spoke, so it connects your siloed processes together. So from that point, this is your complete hands-off approach. It's gone from just simple data to pre-flighting a file, getting a report back that you can send to a customer. And then at the very end, we impose a file, and that can go straight to the press. And from order placement to that process, assuming everything's good with that file and even those custom pieces that have been uploaded in that order, no one had to do anything. No CSR had to be involved. Everything was done hands-off and passed to the appropriate location. So there's a couple other modules. As Antonia said before, we are limited in terms of time, but as I said, it is a sandbox. So there are some other components like a database module. If you needed to connect to, for example, you're a smaller shop that has FileMaker running in the background and you're storing some orders there, you could certainly integrate with those components as well. But yeah, really sky's the limit. And at this point, thank you for the time, and I'll pass it over to Tyler and Tilia to go more in depth on Phoenix itself.
Perfect. Thank you, Sean. All right, so to wrap it all up here and kind of pull all the pieces together, my name is Tyler Thompson. I'm the Solutions Director here at Tilia Labs. And for those of you who don't know who Tilia Labs is or what we do, we are laser focused on solving really one problem, and that's how do we take a list of orders and impose and plan those orders for your particular output device. So for this webinar, we really focused on labels, right? So we kind of take a step back and revisit the graphic that George was discussing at the beginning of the webinar. We had talked a little bit about your customer, and that was Amy. And Amy was part of a brewery, Automate Brewery. And Amy was looking to order labels. So Amy jumped on to her web to print storefront via Infigo, jumped online and pulled some artwork in, created a label, also had some existing PDFs for their different SKUs, and designed the graphics in real time. So that information moved, those orders were then aggregated and pulled together via nFocus switch. So we saw that portion of the workflow once the order was generated get pushed into production, and then those orders were aggregated. Data was transformed to a way that Phoenix can accept it. The PDFs were pre-flighted, made sure the art was good to go. And then, yeah, we kind of saw how nFocus switch is that glue or middleware between Infigo and our product, Tilia Phoenix. So now we're kind of at that last step. And that last step is how do we take these orders and then properly prepare them for and impose them for our press. So that brings us to, yeah, Tilia Labs in our product. And we're going to talk a little bit about just show you for a label example, how we can ingest those orders, take those quantities that were ordered and those SKUs that were ordered, and automatically calculate the best way of imposing those files for press, looking at your rotary dies and your digital label press. So what we find is, you know, the challenge ends up getting solved with Infigo. So the challenge of, yeah, going and capturing those, you know, smaller runs via a web to print storefront, reducing the need for sales, like George mentioned earlier. So once that problem gets solved, then a new problem starts to occur, and the bottleneck becomes, you know, how do we manage these short runs, and how do we manage these short runs in a profitable way, right? Especially when order quantities are really, really low. We don't want to get stuck, you know, with hundreds of SKUs at really, really short, you know, run lengths, and then needing a human to touch every single one of those orders, right? It really defeats the purpose of trying to capture that type of work. So there's a couple other specifically for labels, a couple other interesting, you know, pieces of feedback that we get from our customers when we look at, you know, digital labels on a roll. Typically, we find our customers running each of those orders, you know, filling up the frame or filling up the die and running, you know, SKU number 1 and then SKU number 2 right after it, and then SKU number 3 right after it. So when we have, you know, 5 orders like we have in this case, or 5 SKUs, that then turns into, you know, 5 setups on the Indigo, 5 color checks on the Indigo. You know, you're going to have to go through and splice and rewind those 5 orders. So it becomes, you know, for these smaller runs, really challenging and also rather time consuming, you know, performing those setups on press, checking the color on press, So we need a smarter and faster way to manage this process. So I'm going to show two just quick examples in Phoenix. So this is our product, Tilia Phoenix, and we just saw Sean and the team at Significans automate this process through Enfocus Switch. But I just want to show a couple quick things inside of Tilia Phoenix visually, so we can see how running digital label orders or just any orders in general can be more streamlined. So here's that CSV file from Infigo, and Amy had ordered these 5 different labels. So order quantities 500, 1,000, 500, and we've got different artwork for each of those SKUs. So pretty simple process here. We're just going to take that CSV file and drag it right into our product, Tilia Phoenix. And Phoenix is going to go grab those PDF files on your file server from Infigo that were uploaded, and then attach those order quantities and define the substrate based on that order data there. So in Phoenix, you can see it's going to automatically snap to the die shape or to the label order size, masking all of the extraneous information on the outside. So we've got our different SKUs here, and there's 5 different SKUs. And typically what we see is a label converter is going to take these 5 SKUs, like I mentioned, well, open them up 5 times if they don't have any automation software, and then perform imposition similar to this, where you've got, you know, a rotary die here that's 12 up, so 3 across and 4 down. And then for each one of these SKUs, they're going to generate, you know, 5 SKUs is going to be 5 print frames that they're going to print a number of times on their digital press. And we can do that in Phoenix really quickly. You can see we just did it. It took about 1 second to impose it that way. But I mentioned a couple of challenges that we hear from our customer base about setups on the digital press, you know, checking the color on the digital press, right? So we're gonna have to do that 5 times in this case. But you can see Phoenix will also tell you based on the order quantity, you know, the amount of roll material that you're going to use, how long we're going to be on press, the approximate cost based on the click cost and based on your material cost. And then the file is fully imposed at this point. So a couple things you're going to notice is for each one of these imposed frames, or imposed rotary dies, Phoenix has auto-computed the run length or the number of impressions on press to achieve that order quantity. So for example, this order needs to be printed 42 times, 84 times, right? It's going to take up 30 meters of material. So this is good, but our customers are then typically, especially on the digital label side, asking, hey, how do we reduce the number of setups on our Indigo to make this process more efficient? And that's where we start looking at opportunities to gang these orders together. And that's exactly why in the value that why we developed Phoenix and the value that Phoenix brings to the printer converter. So I'm going to take this same order here, and I'm going to go back into our imposition AI, and I'm going to change our profile from no ganging to ganging. And we're going to see we go from about 106 or 107 meters of material to 106.25. So we save a little bit of material here, but more importantly, we go from about 50 some minutes on press to 30 minutes on press, right? Opening up capacity on press by ganging these label orders together. So now we go from 5 setups down to 3 setups. So we're saving time on setting up the press. We're saving material because we don't have that 10 to 20 feet of material for each one of those setups. And then we're also saving time in rewinding and splicing because we're having to do less of that by persisting an order up a lane or up the web. And then all of this is computed and calculated by Phoenix automatically, right? So, typically the challenge is, yeah, we want to print these things digital, but now we've increased the number of setups on our digital press. So we want to gang the orders, but then if we're ganging all these orders, we have to look at all the, a human is typically looking at all these orders and saying, okay, which ones are on matching dies, which orders are on matching material. And then, based on all of my, hundreds or thousands of rotary dies, how many up are we going to get? And do I go 2 across or do I go 3 across, right? So Phoenix is computing all these things for you instantaneously. Furthermore, we're generating the fully imposed file, ganged up, and then computing the number of frames for each one of these ganged orders. So this then just gets delivered right down to the press. And our imposition is computed. We've reduced material, especially today. That's rather important, as well as streamline the impositioning process in pre-press, really eliminated that process. All right, so I'm going to pass it back over to George and allow you to wrap up.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Tyler, and to all of our presenters. Okay, so just we're now going to open things up for questions, and part of Web Connect Plus, this is a community. We intend this to be very interactive. We want everyone to ask questions to us and to each other, really from this point moving forward. So as a reminder, you can chat us questions. We have tons of people who ask questions during the presentation. We'll get to some of those. But if you'd also like, you can raise your hand using the raise hand function of Zoom, and we'll actually unmute you and allow you to ask your question through Zoom. So we have a few folks here who are going to answer your questions. Of course, our panelists are going to answer questions, as well as Doug Gibson from Infigo will also jump in as well. And I'm going to jump right in. We've got a bunch of questions. So let's start here. This first question I'm going to direct to Doug. Doug, there's a couple questions around just the complexity of these kinds of integrations. I think maybe people have been burned in the past. What are some of the challenges that you have run into integrating with software providers like Infocus and Tilia Labs? What are those challenges, and how do you overcome them?
Thanks, George. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Well done to everybody who's been involved so far. Fantastic demos, guys. So really great to see, and such an important thing, bringing all of this together. So well done to the gang. I think the important thing is try to look at it a bit more holistically. I think some people go straight down to the detail, and what we always say to our customers is take a step back and look at the overall picture of what you're trying to achieve. And that's the right way from the customer journey, right the way of something being invoiced and pushed right out the door, and take a little bit step back from that. Hash out a very simple, could be a pencil drawing, it could be a diagram in Visio or something like that, and step through the different workflows. Look at that from a business requirements point of view. What do you need to achieve? What you're looking to get out of it, what important, then start to map the interactions. And then obviously working with the guys at Significans that have done this a tons of time of getting some expert opinion before you sort of dive in. We hear a lot of customers, hey Doug, I bought Infocus, but I haven't got a clue how to do it, and I've got nobody internally to manage it. So I think taking that step back, understanding it, and not rushing right in to try and solve some of the problems that if you ask some of the community, they've probably solved many times over. So there's just a couple of tidbits there that from my point of view.
Yeah, perfect. And that actually is a really good segue into the next question that I want to ask Sean. We had there's like 4 or 5 people who all asked, does this integrate with X MIS system or X ERP system? How does Significans approach these integrations, particularly kind of when we're talking about MIS or ERP systems in this workflow that we've described today?
Yeah, it's definitely a good question. And I hear it quite often. Generally, my response back is, does that system have an API, or does it have some method of connecting into it? Most modern, whether it's an ERP, MIS, CMS, DAM, whatever, they're all going to have a way to connect and either push or pull information out of that system. So, and sometimes that goes into, oh, we have to buy a very specific module, but really it's going to save you time at the end of the day once you have everything integrated. Again, going back to the example of Infigo placing an order, and if you're using FileMaker, or if you're using some sort of MIS system behind the scenes, for example, if we're talking about corrugation and you're using something to run standards or track stuff on that side of things, you're going to have multiple other systems that you need to integrate with. In our example, it's a very, very niche thing of just one input, one output, but you're obviously going to have other things going on. And so yeah, as long as there's a module to connect to it, it's pretty straightforward.
Perfect. The devil's always in the details, I know, with those kinds of things. But yeah, it sounds like APIs are pretty important, or some kind of module that allows us to push and pull data. And if we have that, then Sean, would you say more or less, more often than not, we can find a way to integrate?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, the example for Infigo is when we worked with them to get this all running is there's just an app that they provide that it monitors the system, that once those orders get placed, we get a notification on our system. We pick up an XML file and that data file. And once we have that file and that data, the sky's the limit for us. We can do kind of whatever we need with that.
Excellent. Okay, I've got a question. I'm going to ask this first to Tyler, but I'll let anyone else jump in if they also have a reply. We had a couple people ask about variable data. Tyler, can you explain a little bit how Tilia Phoenix from the imposition side handles variable data?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there's a couple ways. So typically with variable data, you're going to have a database of those variables, right? Like let's take first names, for example. So we're going to have a list of first names that are coming from some source. Could be an Excel document, could be online, could be in their MIS system. What we're going to do in Phoenix is allow you to generate that base artwork in Illustrator or PDF. And then you can attach variable text, you can attach variable marks, barcodes, which are really common in our example for labels. And then we have a way of taking that data, pushing it to each product, and then using that variable inside of our text or inside of our barcodes really, really easily. So you can build that directly inside of Phoenix or directly inside of your Adobe Illustrator file by just defining, a string or a barcode that's going to be variable. And then we do the merge of the database file or the Excel document or the data in general to that base artwork file. And then, just like we saw dynamically imposing those label SKUs on the web, we would take, each iteration or each, variable piece of art all the way up the web as if it was, one label.
Perfect. Doug or Sean, either of you want to elaborate on any of that?
I think the only thing I'll add and just mention is, Tyler, I know in the latest version of Phoenix that came out, you guys have really ramped up and enhanced marks. I believe it was enhanced marks with individual products, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. We've added a ton, even to the point like where we've introduced an entirely new scripting module for this use case. where we've exposed like the entire PDF library. I mean, you can go in and start variably drawing with a pin tool by passing XY coordinates, right? Like you can draw variably pretty much anything. You know, most common scenario is some text or a barcode. But yeah, with our scripting, you could go as far as pulling in external files, scripting lines, drawing with a pin tool. I mean, you could do some pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah, I think the only bit to add is in our lovely Amy. So if we take her scenario, she might have a ton of SKUs. So she can chuck in a data file to us. We can take that data file. We can either do some pre-processing with it or just fire it directly down through Infocus, then to the guys at Tilia Labs. Or if it's a much bigger run, we can do stuff like that. So yeah, I think there's lots of options. Whether the user needs right away some interaction right up the front, or actually they want the heavy lifting to be done based on, should I put this on a 6900, should I go on a 20,000, whatever it is, if there's some more logic that needs to be driven down the chain. And I think that's the really clever thing about working with the three businesses and that we're talking today is we're not trying to, or the imposition sorry, not the imposition, the variable needs to be done in Infigo, or it needs to be done in Focus, or we need to push until it's all about what does the client need. And I think that's the important thing. Neither of us are precious. We want it to be done in the most efficient way for the customer, giving them the right outputs. And each scenario is going to take a different route depending on what the end customer needs in and what the end customer needs out. And as you mentioned, Sean, I think you might have a database somewhere. You've got a ton of data. You might be feeding that into Tilia Labs. We might be populating some of that. So there could be actually 2 or 3 parties going on. Might be from a drugs. If you're pulling in drug information, putting a recipe information on the back of a label and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and we can achieve. And I think you've got the flexibility right from the front of the point of entry to the point of sending that job to the rep. So you've got a ton of flexibility within the variable data.
Perfect. Before I ask the next question that came in through the chat here, just wanted to give everyone a moment. Does anyone want to raise their hand and ask a question directly to one of our panelists? As a reminder, there's a function in Zoom. It's that little like emotion thing, and you can raise your hand. So anyone wants to do that? No, yeah, that's okay. It's sometimes easier just to ask in the chat, but very good. Okay, I've got a couple more questions here. There was one question, and I don't want anyone to go too deep into this because I think we're going to actually have another webinar around this. But someone noticed, Tyler, your boxes on one of your slides. So there's a question around this particular integration or workflow, and whether it's specific just for labels, or if it can be expanded into maybe boxes or commercial print. I'm actually going to start with Doug. Anything to say around that?
Hi, yeah, absolutely. I think you've got, we try to be as agnostic as possible in terms of the application type, and that's definitely one of the strengths of Infigo. You're not sort of shoehorned in, right, I've got some labels, I need some boxes, got some other stuff. So I think the application is very, very extensive from that point of view. Yeah.
Perfect. Sounds like a one-stop shop. And if we think back to Amy and her problems, the buyer of today does want that like one-stop shop and one platform to manage everything. So I think that's a great benefit of your solution and this integration.
And I think that's George. Sorry to cut. Yeah, I think it's a really good point. If we take Amy's scenario, and we literally are working live on this at the moment, is like Amy wants some labels, but she also wants those labels once they're wrapped around a bottle to go in a box because it's a gift box, and then she wants to be able to push that into a shipping wrapper that goes out the door. And I think a lot of customers that were found have gone down one trick pony and can solve one of those things. So I think that's a great example where you need to just think a little bit more outside of the box, from that one of a better way.
Yeah, Tyler, anything to add around boxes?
Yeah. I mean, look, the industry is converging, right? And it's not like we have printers that just print boxes and printers that just print labels, right? In a lot, well, we do still have that, but in a lot of cases, the industry is converging, and the industry is also finding, different sources of revenue and purchasing label equipment if they're a box printer, or vice versa, right? So that is, one thing I would kind of toot our own horn about really every, partner on this call, is that we aren't focused just on labels. And like you mentioned, George, this is something that, over the course of the next couple quarters, we focused on labels now, but we're extending our demos and our webinars to focus next on, well, we don't know yet what is next, but cartons or boxes or wide format. But our solutions together, just like Infigo is able to facilitate a web to print store for your traditional commercial print or cartons or boxes. Tilia Labs can do the same thing for impositioning, right? So we can imposition for a web or a roll on rotary dies, just as well as we can, true shape nest for boxes or cartons or wide format.
Excellent. Yeah, I think we just stay tuned for more to come, I think, on some of that. So excellent. All right, so we are running low on questions. I'll give everyone another minute or two. If you've got any questions, throw them in the chat. Otherwise, I will talk slowly through this last slide in case any straggler questions come in. Thank you everyone for registering. As part of the registration process, you'll get a copy of a link to this webinar so that you can share it internally or view it again. We definitely want to keep this community growing. We want to keep this community engaged. We're going to be doing a lot more, not just on the webinar side, but we're also going to bring some really exciting things for in-person events coming up as well. And we want all of you, you're the kind of the first group of people, you're the founders along with us. We want this to be a really exciting community that'll grow. So please go ahead and jump on the LinkedIn group. That's gonna be a great way to converse with all of us. And then otherwise, keep an eye out. Our next WebConnect Plus webinar will be in August. No more questions came in. Unless any of our panelists want to make any closing statements, I will adjourn our webinar.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, George. Appreciate the MC.
Yeah, thanks a lot, George.
No problem. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining today. Meeting adjourned.